Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished doctor, medtech businessman from Arkansas, USA, Dr. Joe Duggar. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ash.
Joe is the Chief Executive Officer of OneLife Direct Care. And as I mentioned, he's a physician. His vision is to transform the lives of 1 million individuals by 2025, making affordable, immediate healthcare a reality for all. So, Joe, tell me a little bit about your journey and what was your motivation to start OneLife Direct?
Well, Ash, I practice, and I'm still actively practicing clinical medicine as a primary care physician in Central Arkansas, the town that I grew up in, actually. And my wife and I are both from this area, and so we have a very deep tie to the community, and have always really enjoyed practicing medicine, but realized over the last 10 years or so that it was getting more difficult to really spend time with patients, to deliver the care that needed to be delivered, and that the model and the system in our current situation is broken and there needs to be something different. So I started looking at different opportunities and started learning more about direct primary care. And so I decided to go to that model about 5 years ago. And then 3 years ago, exclusively started doing that.
Wow.
And so I realized that, it could be much better and much different. So we have basically a direct contract with patients and with employer groups. And we obviously still use insurance for major medical and specialty care, but we're able to act as basically their professional guide. And that personal relationship is really the key in healthcare. And if you can have that with your primary healthcare team, it makes all the difference. And so access is huge in what we do, and 85% of what I do is by text. So patients can text me anytime. We accomplish a lot just via, the way we normally communicate it in other ways, by text and email. So it's really a lot more personal service, but it's much more affordable as well.
Amazing. And one, of course, is that you are giving access to your patients through text. But what are some of the core principles of your approach to giving all these healthcare benefits?
Well, I think number one is that life is precious, and we value human life, from conception to the last breath. And so we really do try to everything we do is centered around the patient. And so patient-centric care is really something that I think we have neglected or left behind, so to speak, in the healthcare system. And I think it's difficult to really do that in the fee-for-service system, which is our insurance-based system, because it's such high volume, and you're just trying to see 25 to 35 patients a day, and it's not much time with each patient. So being able to be intentional and have that time that the patients need to give them, and then the access is the other thing. Access to be able to communicate with your physician and your healthcare team. We have multiple disciplines involved in the care. So there's a pharmacist, there's a physician, there's a nurse, and then mental health therapist. And we do as a team, we share that collaborative effort to take care of patients. So having that core relationship is also important. So you have a team that you know and trust. And then the other thing, the third pillar, I would say, is really we emphasize fitness and nutrition as key components, foundational elements of primary care. And we're able to do that in our model because We're not concerned about insurance reimbursement. Since we have a direct contract with the patient.
Mhm. Well said. And can you describe the immediate impact your approach has had on both employers and your patients?
Absolutely. So for individuals, we have, I guess the best way for me to do that is to tell you one example of what, with one patient, what happened.
Yeah.
Had a patient come in about 2 years ago, and I'll call him Mike. That's not his real name, but Mike never seeks care unless he's just in dire straits. And he's in his early 70s. Both he and his wife came in the office. He was complaining of some chest pain, and he didn't look good. And so everything checked out normal. But I told him, I said, something's going on. You don't look good. So I'm gonna get the cardiologist involved, and we're gonna put you in the hospital and run some tests. And the normal system now is that you admit a patient to the hospitalist, and the hospitalist will then get the cardiologist. And it's a 2 or 3 step process, sometimes 24 hours or later before you're getting to see the cardiologist. But in our system, we have direct, contact with our specialist too. And so I called the cardiologist while he was still in the office, while the patient was still there, and told him what was going on. And he said, yes, just send him directly to me. I'll see him. Well, within 2 hours, the cardiologist calls me back and said, well, I went ahead and took him to the cath lab, and we did a cardiac cath, because just like you had experienced, he checked out normal, but he just didn't look good, and we knew something was going on.
Mm.
And when he called me, the patient was already in the ambulance on the way to Little Rock to get 5-vessel bypass surgery. He said he had blockage, so they sent him down. But that wasn't the end of the story. So I called the cardiovascular surgeon, or I texted him that he was going to see that day. And I said, hey, Mike's on his way to see you. I know you're going to get to take good care of him. You want to give you a heads up. And he texted me right back, and he said, yeah, he's on the operating table, and I'll let you know. I'll give you a call this evening. So that was about a 7-hour window from the time he came to my office until the time he was on the table to get surgery. But what none of us knew at that point was that he actually had what we call a dissection of the aortic arch of the thoracic aorta. So his aorta was coming apart, and that was what was causing his chest pain.
Wow.
And the cardiologist couldn't see it either. But as they were doing the preoperative study of an ultrasound of his heart, they saw it. And then so the surgeon was able to go in, emergently repair his aorta, do his 5-vessel bypass, all of that at the same time. And so he basically saved his life. But had he not had that expedited care, he wouldn't have made it. And so I think that's a good example of what you can have when you have direct relationship or communication, or both actually, with your physicians. And then your physicians communicate in an efficient way and kind of cut out all the normal process that we have in our system.
Correct. And
So
I think your early and immediate action and the fact that he had direct access to you probably saved his life. But my next question, Joe, is that healthcare in USA is often a topic of serious discussion at very high political levels all the time. My question to you is, what are key trends in healthcare that you believe need more attention?
I think that the biggest one is the nationalization, I would call it, of our healthcare system. And so I think the more that we allow the federal government to control things and take it out of the hands of the physicians and the providers, then the more impersonal the care is going to be, and the harder to access care. I do think you can have a socialized medicine system and then operate a direct primary care like what we're doing inside of that system. But I think we need to be involved in that conversation. And I think that that's the market itself is going to actually help correct the problem. So in 2022, the national the average income for a family in the US was actually surpassed by the average healthcare spend by a family. So those two lines have been going in this trajectory towards each other for decades now, the last 2 decades. And 2 years ago, they actually crossed.
Wow.
And so now we have a situation where the average healthcare spend by the American family is more than the average income, which is not sustainable, obviously.
Wow.
So I think that has to be addressed. We spend way too much money. You know, if you look at our ranking globally, we're always ranked in the 30s as a healthcare system when you use the factors of quality of care, outcomes like average lifespan, and the amount of money that we spend per person on healthcare. We're not even in the top 10 in the US. And so we can do a lot better, but we spend way more money than any other country in the world. So we need to put those funds to better use. And you'd asked about employer groups and the outcomes there and the difference that we're making. So one employer group uses our direct care plan inside of their employer-based healthcare benefit program. Those groups are saving up to 50% on their spend annually, which is, a group of 1,000 people, an employer group that has 1,000 employees, they're going to save, $7 million, $10 million a year just by doing a direct care plan. So it's a tremendous benefit. And the other part of that's they're getting a lot better care.
Thank you. Great response. And what role does technology play in enabling your healthcare solutions?
So we're able to do everything that is feasible and that is accessible because we're not limited and restricted by the current healthcare model. So we've kind of thrown off the chain, so to speak, when it comes to accessing the very latest technology. And so even if we had 100% of our physicians who are retiring early or who are choosing a different career because of burnout, which, by the way, I think our current system, what I call assembly line medicine, is the number one reason we're seeing burnout among providers in the US. But if we had all of them engaged again, and we had maximum amount of nurse practitioners and physician assistants and all our doctors practicing as efficiently as they could, we still would not be able to service all of the healthcare needs in our country. But so it's going to take AI, it's going to take everything else that we can bring to the table to really effectively get it out there. So we do use AI. There's an app that you can use on your phone that uses light technology, and it will read blood pressure and pulse. And so you can access a lot of these services, and you can even automate your wellness visits. It'll auto schedule those for you. And, about 6% of people do their annual wellness consistently. And the main reason that they don't get it done, the other 94% of us don't get it done, is because we just don't take the time to schedule it. So we can automate a lot of those things, and with our personal touch and the human involvement that we have as a relationship with those patients, we can really maximize their healthcare benefits.
Well said. My next question, Joe, is how do you maintain a balance between cutting-edge healthcare solutions and user-friendly services? Because I know that every time I go to a hospital or a doctor, you're almost in awe of all the equipment and all the stuff that is going on in the hospital.
Right. Well, I think it is helpful to have, it takes a team of people for sure. And so it's helpful to have the experts in IT and the experts in the innovative imaging, surgical procedures, labs, and have a good relationship with those individuals. And again, it's just with the patient-physician relationship, I think it's imperative that as a company, we maintain really good relationships with all of those who are philosophically aligned with us and provide this patient-centric care.
Okay. And When I was preparing for my conversation with you, I was amazed to see that you also engage a lot with healthcare providers to ensure quality and efficiency. Tell me a little bit more about this.
Well, we have when we sign up a physician or a provider to work for us or have a collaborative agreement with us, we have initial conversations. We get to know each other from a professional standpoint, and then there is a statement that they have to sign to attest to what our core values are. And it's a very simple statement. It's a very simple contract, really. But in that is a commitment to be available. And that doesn't mean, we still want all of our providers to have a good work-life balance. And in fact, I would say in our model, our providers are much happier. They're much more engaged with their family and with their extracurricular activities as well as with their patients, because they have the ability to do both and do both well. Our current healthcare system, if you're in primary care and you're practicing medicine in the outpatient setting in a clinic, you're spending so much time, I call it checking boxes for insurance companies. So you may have a 12-hour day or an 8-hour day, but you're spending 70% of that time in stuff that's not patient care, but it's got to be done. And so our physicians aren't able to practice at the top of their license. They're not able to really do the things they trained to do and went to medical school to do. But in our system, almost 100% of every interaction and everything we do is directly involved in patient care. And a lot of it's direct interactions with patients. And we can be a lot more efficient. So providers have more time for their family and for their extracurriculars. And so it's really a commitment to excellent patient care, availability when we are on call, so to speak, and then to take care of ourselves too and our families.
Absolutely. How do you see your approach influencing the broader healthcare industry in your state and in your country?
Well, I think one of our big goals is to, or part of the big goal, I guess I should say, that we have is to really reach a lot more people to make this model available, especially to employer groups, because we can scale and grow much more quickly as we add employer groups. And the bottom line is we need this. It literally saves people's lives and it enhances their lives to live a better life. And so we have a very strong drive and a sense of urgency to get this out there and get it, the model, into the mainstream medicine world. So right now there's a little over 2,000 direct primary care practices in the U.S. And those practices service somewhere between 40 and 50,000, or I'm sorry, 300,000 lives. But that's just a very small fraction of the total number of people in the U.S. So we really want to connect with the larger groups and get this out there to as many as we can.
Well said. So time for two more questions. Tell me a little bit more about your vision to transform 1 million lives. How do you envision reaching your goal by 2025?
A lofty goal.
It is.
And it really is about connections. And so we've gotten the groundwork laid, I would say, for this to happen. And I think it can happen fairly quickly. Our initial goal is to really enhance what we're doing in Arkansas. So working with employer groups here, we've launched a healthcare benefit program for employers. We can customize plans for them. And so, we can take the smallest group down to about 5 employees. We can do this for self-employed or for small business owners. And we can do this for the large businesses with thousands of employees. And we're able to do that fairly efficiently as far as getting that up and running for them. And then we have opportunities globally, and we're, trying to initially work right here in our hometown, in our backyard, so to speak. But we have a group in Colombia, South America, that we are just getting started with. So I really believe this model can work in almost any setting in any country to benefit those around them. So we have a global vision for this, and not just an Arkansas or a U.S. vision. So we anticipate, with some of the connections we've made and some of the groups that we already have started, that we'll have really good participation with the employers and with the physicians we're working with.
Well, good luck. And my last question, Joe, given the fact that you're a practicing medical doctor, what is the most rewarding aspect of your work in transforming employer healthcare?
Well, I think the most rewarding, the most gratifying, I would say, benefit that I see is when we have this system in place, and we have a conversation 6 months down the road or the next year, and they're telling me that they saved $5 million that year in their healthcare spend. And then I hear the testimonies from their employees, how they couldn't get this procedure previously, and they've tried for 4 or 5 years, and now they've gotten the everything they've needed from their health benefit program. And the fact that they can text their doctor anytime and get what they need, for some of them, it just blows them away, because they've never experienced anything like that. So it's very rewarding for us to see people come off their blood pressure medicine, their diabetes medicine, and feel empowered to live a healthier life, because we are emphasizing the lifestyle medicine part of that, and getting, I guess, equipping them, empowering them to do things that they never really thought were possible, like not be a diabetic when someone has been diagnosed with that and feels like that's what's going to be the rest of their life, the way it is. And so those are very, from a personal and from a organizational standpoint, those are very gratifying for me to see.
Amazing. Joe, on that note, thank you so much for speaking to me about your own amazing journey. Thank you for speaking to me about OneLife Direct and the way you seem to be transforming healthcare for so many people. I mean, in most of the world, getting access to a physician is getting more and more difficult. You seem to be turning the thing around on its head and making life so much easier for patients to be able to reach out to you and all the people who work with OneLife Direct. I think I learned several new things from you about all the wonderful work that you're doing. Thank you for that. Thank you also for all your mission of transforming 1 million lives. I'll keep watching out as you keep reaching those milestones. All the very best to you. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thanks, Ash. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website, www.tbcy.in, to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.